friends. This is Colleen.
And this is Margaret.
And we're the Cousins Weird. Hi. Look at us being consistent.
I know, oh my god.
Can you even imagine us being consistent? Like, it's been a year.
It's been a bit.
It's been a bit. But we're trying real hard because we love you guys so much.
And we love doing this.
We really do.
It's just sometimes hard. And a lot of it is not even, like, hard to get together. Sometimes it's hard to do the work.
Research.
Yeah, like, to get in there. It's like, a lot of times it's like, I've been like, I just can't today. Like, my brain just was like, nope.
Yeah, because we work full time. Margaret's going to school now. She's got little ones at home. And
driving a lot.
Yeah.
A lot. Last week I had, what was it? When this gets played, it's like 2 weeks ago, we had the snowstorms, right?
Yeah.
There were 2 nights. Normally, it takes me about an hour and 25 minutes to get to school and to get back home. 2 nights. It was a Tuesday and a Thursday. Awful. We were snowstorming. It took me 2.5 hours to get home.
And stressful, too.
Both nights. And it stressed me out. Of course, I normally like to stop, like, halfway home.
Right.
Like around Boone Village, just to go pee and to get out.
Right, get out of the car.
Move around a little bit. But those 2 nights I didn't, because I'm like, if I get in, I pull into this, I'm not gonna leave. Because I'm gonna be like, nope, I'm good. But it's like, you get to a point where I just want to get home. I just want to get home. And it's like, you're going 35 miles an hour for how many miles?
Terrible.
90 miles.
Not fun.
Yeah, it's really not. It was awful. So, yeah.
Speaking of driving, we just drove to see my brother in North Carolina. Rich and I split the drive. And then Griffin and Bree and Max rode in another car. My mom rode with us. And
Lee rode with you too, right?
No, Lee didn't come with us.
Oh, Lee didn't go?
He wasn't able to come. He had to work. So, it was just the 6 of us. But we didn't have room in one car to go. So.
Right. You didn't stay for a full week, though, did you?
No, we stayed, because Griffin, Bree, and Rich couldn't get the whole week off, so we went for 5 days. So
still nice.
It was very nice. It was nice to be down there. It was warmer than here, which was nice.
And you didn't stop on the way home, you drove straight through?
We drove straight through, waited there and back, because it's about 10 hours, so it's not horrible. And with
splitting the drive with someone else.
And splitting it, actually, on the way there, we drove at night, which we thought, well, this is a great idea. We'll miss traffic, blah, blah, blah. It sucked. Because it's dark, you can't see anything.
I know, I hate
and
that.
You're freaking tired because you're staying up all night driving. It was, on the way home was much more enjoyable.
It's like, people are like, oh, I was like, yeah, but you still have to sleep when you get there.
Yeah, so we slept. We got in at 5:30 in the morning, and I slept until about 11:30, or 11. And then, so you were tired all day, but at least we got to hang out with Eric that day. And he made spaghetti sauce, so good. And then Rich's birthday was while we were there, so we went out and just went to different breweries that were in the area.
Fun.
And bars that were cool for his birthday, and then had a cookout at Eric's, and then we came home. And like it was so fast, but it was so nice to be there. And it was like the kind of vacation where it was just like low key because we were just hanging out. So it was like we didn't have it packed full of like adventures.
We're gonna do this and we're gonna do that.
Yeah, so it wasn't like as tiring as it would be.
I like those kind of vacations.
Yeah.
Because they feel like a vacation.
You feel rested.
Right. I mean,
even though we were up all night one of the days.
Right. And there is like if you're like, oh, there's a zoo where there's this one thing we want to do or we want to go to this one place. That's fine. But like try to just do it like once. Like,
and have a couple and the other days down.
I'd love to take my kids to Florida, but you need to like take an extra week off just to recover from the Florida trip. Because if you're going to spend the money and go all that way, you
better do it all.
You're going to do it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
You're going to go to Universal. Yeah. And you're going to go to Disney.
Yeah, and our whole point of going was just to visit. It wasn't to do any, you know what I mean? So it was a family trip instead of a adventure trip. So it was nice. It was good. And then, they're coming up this summer for the cabin. We'll be together for a week then. And that's always relaxing and fun because we just hang out. It's great. I love those kind of things.
Me too.
And I love being at Wanakina too. So, and North Carolina is beautiful. It's perfect this time of year to be there because it's not too hot.
I would hate it in the summer.
But, and he says like in the summer it sucks, but it's not a long time that it sucks. So it's kind of like, a few months.
Although the last summer we've had
sucky,
horrible,
hot, humid summers.
90
I hate it.
degrees. I don't live in northern New York State for it to be 90 degrees.
I know. I'm not putting up with this 20 below nonsense to have 90-degree humidity. Right. Like, no.
No.
Now, I would much rather have the snow than earthquakes and tornadoes and all the horrible things that other places have. But I'm like, does North Carolina have anything bad? Every once in a while
they have like
a hurricane, but if you're on the coast, if you're like inward, They don't really have it that bad there.
That's good.
Yeah,
they do have crazy spiders, though, don't they?
They got crazy spiders.
Do they get
big ones?
Alligators there?
No.
That's good.
No. Crazy big spiders.
Florida, Louisiana. No,
you couldn't pay me enough money.
You couldn't. I'll visit.
Even New Orleans.
And I'm gone.
Super cool there. Love to visit.
Don't want to live there.
Don't want to live there. You're
nope.
That's gonna be underwater for someday forever. Like there's
Same
no
Florida's gonna be gone. I bet Long Island, Florida, and a bunch of California are gonna disappear eventually.
Like I think the safest place probably if we all move to Colorado because the altitude's high enough where you can if everything starts to melt.
We might be okay here.
Maybe. Probably we probably have the ocean. We'll probably have ocean front property.
Yeah.
Someday.
Yeah, we can move to the Adirondacks. They're old mountains, but they're up there.
Yeah.
We'd be okay.
I think. But we would have oceanfront property.
We would.
Mm-hmm. So it'd be even better in the Adirondacks. You got all everything, the mountains and the coast. But anyway. Okay, so we're on part 2 of the Dyatlov Pass incident. I have to really think when I say these words.
Dyatlov?
I can't handle language. Dyatlov. Pass.
You're saying it more Russian-y.
I'm trying to be real Russian with it.
It sounds good.
Okay. Got it.
It sounds good.
That was what I was trying to do. If I had hair to toss back right now, I would. But anyway. Okay, so we're going to start now. We talked about what they discovered. We talked about what they were going to do, what the expedition was going to be, what they weren't found, or they didn't show up on the 12th of February and send the telegram. The 20th of February, people went out to search for them. They found a gruesome bodies. The scene was gruesome, what they found.
Yeah.
Right? And all there are is a bunch of questions. Like, what the frig? And the only thing that the investigation was there to do was rule out homicide. And they did. They said there was no homicide. But they didn't have any answers for the families or for anyone in Russia. Like, what happened to these people?
What about reckless homicide?
Yeah.
They can't rule that out.
Yeah.
They really can't. Because what if somebody was chasing them around and running around through the woods
and they bounced off trees?
And it made them so scared that they died from the elements because they were too scared to go to their tents. That's a reckless homicide.
That is. Mm-hmm. So we're going to delve into the theories that have come up over the years. Because again, this was in 1959. And theories are going on to this day. Something real recent in 2022 came up. So Margaret's theory is aliens, or...
It could be aliens, or it could be like the weird noise thing.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
Or it could have been some kind of weird Soviet army base that they stumbled upon and they saw something they weren't supposed to see, and then they... got scared.
Using, some of the theories stem from the photographs that they found on the cameras.
But nobody's seen these photographs, have they?
Well, as time goes on, things get released.
Right.
So one theory emerged from the examination of the final photograph captured on Georgie's camera. And I was just like, Georgie.
His name. I
know. It reveals flares and streaks of light set against the black sky. When lead prosecutor, because there were prosecutors that investigate, that's who investigates there, Ivanov retired. So he was the lead person investigating it. When he retired, he finally felt safe to express his true beliefs of what happened. He couldn't do it then.
Ugh.
So in 1990, he wrote an article titled The Enigma of Fireballs, which is a title.
It is.
In that article, he discloses that he had been pressured to admit his personal views during the initial report. He was told he only could say what didn't happen. Right? So he only could say it wasn't a homicide. That's the only point of him being there. He couldn't, if he had any idea of what really happened, he wasn't allowed to share it. So he suspected that the skiers met their demise through heat rays or fireballs associated with the unidentified flying object. So UFO, aliens. Other campers added to the narrative that were staying within that area at the time that they saw bright flying spheres in the sky during that time period. Details that had not been surfaced during the original investigation. So their investigation, they had talked to those campers that were in similar area, found in this, camping in that similar area at that time. But they couldn't put anything out about it. So no one ever knew about these eyewitnesses. Now, he's quoted as saying, I suspected at the time, and I am certain now, that these bright flying spheres had a direct connection to the group's death. So, aliens. He's saying aliens. Is there any other proof? No, there's not, really. There's nothing. Other people saw spheres in the sky that night.
It could have just been something. Maybe they were scared.
Maybe those spheres scared them.
Something scared them, and they were not thinking right, and they ran out. And then by the time they realized it was too late. They were, and they couldn't. And it could have been at night.
If it's storming, they wouldn't be able to see to get back to their tent.
And even if it wasn't storming, like if it's
pitch black, it's going to be pitch black.
Right, it's pitch black. You're terrified, and then you're like, okay,
where did they run from?
Right, and then
what direction did I run?
Your hypothermia, it doesn't take long for that to set in when it's that cold, and they don't have any. They just basically, one person could install panic in the whole
mass
group.
Hysteria. That's fascinating. I would do a whole episode on it.
I know, and it's like one person could cause the whole tent to
freak out,
and then they run because they're terrified, and then once they realize we're okay.
Wait, where the fuck are we?
Yeah, where are we? They don't have shoes. They don't have outer clothes on. They're like, what do? We can't find our way back. That's why maybe some of them were finding their way back, and
some of them were like, we're gonna get. Well, and some of them were like, we're gonna build a fire and wait till daylight. Like, we're gonna try to survive.
And they couldn't. It's too cold because they didn't have clothes. They didn't have the right clothes.
Then other ones tried to make a den just within feet of where the fire was.
And honestly, the people that were crushed could have just been maybe snow fell. There's something maybe there's a mini avalanche.
They made a snow dam,
and maybe it collapsed on them after they died.
Right.
You know what I mean? That could have caused a crushing weight.
Yeah, because they could have died of hypothermia and then got crushed by the weight of the snow that it collapsed.
And maybe they thawed and your eyes are the first thing to go.
Flopped out.
Or they dissolved. Decomposed is a better word.
So, the bright lights in the sky also lead to another theory among Russian citizens who began questioning whether, because now there's reports, okay, now we know, because he wrote this article in the 1990s, way after it happened. Okay, there was lights in the sky. What? We didn't know this. So they began to question whether the Soviet government is hiding something. Well, did you just begin to? Because they sealed everything.
Yeah.
They closed that off for 3 years. No one could go near that mountain.
And there's a radioactive activity?
And there was radioactive stuff on the clothes of 2 people.
Mm-hmm. This isn't that much after World War II.
No.
The nuclear bombs. So.
Exactly. So, and actually, the one that was added, the 37-year-old, he was a veteran of the war. So.
It could have been him.
It could have.
He could have had what they called then shell shock. Which we call now PTSD. Maybe something happened, he heard something and freaked out. And everybody else freaked out with him.
Mm-hmm. The bright lights in the sky, along with finding radiation on certain clothing, fueled the theory that the skiers succumbed to some kind of failed weapons test. Stumbled upon something they shouldn't have. Were in a location where things they shouldn't have been because they were testing weapons that no one should have known about. A separate group of hikers located about 30 miles from Dyatlov Pass, they were 30 miles away that night, stated they witnessed strange orange orbs hovering in the sky above Dead Mountain. So where they were located, they could see these orbs in that direction.
Right.
Many attributed these sightings to government weapons testing. So a lot of theories were coming out. They're like, why do they have radiation on them? If there was a blast, they would have been like, what the frig? And all panicked and ran out, right? If they heard blast, if they saw bright lights in the sky, all that it would have illuminated, even outside the tent, they would have noticed that there was, even if they're in the tent, if something was illuminating above them, that would have freaked them out. A blast would have freaked them out. Like, they would have been like, we got to get out of here. What is that? And scare them enough to leave their tents. And again, like you said, take off running, not knowing where they were. How did they find their way back?
Seriously, I think that's the basis of why they were in the state they were in, and and they were dressed the way they were dressed.
Something startled them.
Something scared them, and they panicked, and that's what happened. Like, that's why they didn't.
Regardless of what it was that caused the panic, panic is what caused them to leave. We don't know what caused the panic, but we know pretty sure that panic. Why else would they have left the way they did?
Right. Something
panicked them. Something scared them enough to make them. We have to get out of the safety of our tent. In various arrays of dress. So, According to this line of thought, a failure in the missile launch inflicted severe injuries on some of the skiers. The theory suggests that in desperate escape, the group abandoned their tent, succumbing to the harsh elements, or possibly even facing fatal encounters with the military observers. So, did the military, find that, oh God, there's people here, we can't let them out knowing what we did? Did they kill them? Did they scare them enough to where they ran off?
This is also where you say, do we believe the autopsy?
Exactly.
Did they die of hypothermia or was it something else?
And one of the ones found trying to get back to the tent did have, and I don't think I mentioned it earlier, a baton-shaped bruise on their side, which was quite, again, you're skiing, you're in extreme, you could have hit a ski pole against you, you could have hit a stick.
You don't know when the bruise happened.
But there was,
right.
Adding to the theories, there was a baton-shaped bruise on the side of her, one of the females.
They kept in-depth journals. You think that if somebody had an accident, they probably would have mentioned it.
True. It wasn't. Or unless they didn't tell them. Or who knows?
Right.
Some argue that it explains the unusual appearance of the bodies at the funerals. That they had a slight orange and withered complexion.
Well, they were
again, the orange hue could be expected given the frigid conditions and basically mummified them during the weeks of exposure. They were mummified in the cold, which is right up your alley, Margaret.
It is, I know.
Skeptics also think the radioactive the ones people are saying, okay, this theory doesn't make sense. Or trying to be devil's advocate to this theory is that the radioactive traces found on the clothing could be potentially linked to the nuclear incident that occurred 2 years prior, known as Kishtim disaster. One of the hikers had resided in the combat zone, so they were and lived in that, so they could have had it. They could always have a low dose of radioactivity on them at all times. And another one actually was involved in the cleanup efforts. So those two people could have had that on their clothes, could have carried it on them at all times.
Because they think if they had been subjected to nuclear, they would all have it.
All have it.
Right.
Not just to people's clothing. And you would think if it exploded there, you would have found it. People going there would have gotten exposure to it too. The search party. Despite this plausible explanation, a lingering suspicion persists among many Russians, fueled by the belief that the government is withholding crucial information. Now, I agree the government is withholding crucial information because look what happened with their nuclear meltdown at
Chernobyl.
Chernobyl, thank you.
Did you ever watch that?
Oh yeah,
that was good. That show.
The series.
Oh my god, it ruined me.
I actually did a whole report on it in high school because I was obsessed with Chernobyl. My dad had articles. My dad loved natural disasters or disasters. My dad would save information on it. He was a true crime junkie, really.
He really
just didn't know it. But he always saved information on that kind of stuff. He'd read about it. And I remember he had all newspaper clippings and magazines from that time that I was able to use as research. And I'm obsessed with, and I couldn't think of the name of it, but I was obsessed with Chernobyl for a long time. But you look what they did with they didn't tell anyone that happened. It was all about covering things up because it's a big pride thing.
Right.
We have to be the best. We have to look the best.
All countries are like that. Our country.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
But I don't know if it was to the extent of the Soviet Union, because that was
especially at that time.
Yes.
It was very much.
Everything was locked down.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Oh, we can't let them know that we had a mistake.
Exactly.
It makes us look vulnerable.
And they probably didn't want it out, regardless of what happened, the mysteriousness of this incident that happened out in the world, that anything bad would happen there. That they would succumb to anything unusual in general.
But militaries back then, because we're getting into peak Cold War here.
Right.
They were so afraid of any of their rivals finding anything out about what they're doing. So even if it was something that didn't seem important, it might have felt important to them.
Right. Or people might think that we did something that we weren't doing, but we can't let them think that we were doing. You know what I mean? Even if
we don't want them to know that we're doing this.
Yeah.
Or that we're not doing this. We want them.
Yeah.
It's more of a mystery.
Mystery behind it.
They don't want anyone to know anything.
Right. I can't let them know we're testing things, but we also want them to think that we aren't testing things. We don't want them to know.
Right.
In the year 2000, The Dyatlov Group Memorial Foundation was established by relatives and friends of the victims with the purpose of honoring the memory of the skiers and seeking the truth. So this is 2000. They're still trying to find the real answer behind it, right? In 2008, a conference was organized by the Ural State Technical University, which was the Polytech school that they went to. They just renamed it, that all the students were in collaboration with the Dyatlov organization. They wanted to uncover the truth around the hikers' death. The goal was the conference was to explore the answers regarding the circumstances surrounding their deaths. During the investigation, in the Dyatlov path, a 3-foot-long piece of metal was discovered in the area. The Dyatlov Foundation took possession of it. According to their findings, the metal was identified as part of the Soviet ballistic missile. The foundation concluded that the missile tests conducted in the region inadvertently led to the deaths. So under what they were saying, they're like, we found proof that this was it. But the thing is, how do you know that? How long had that been there?
It could have been before.
It could have been before. It could have been after. It could have been after. It could have been years after. It could have. I mean, this is in 2008.
Right.
It's how many years? 50.
Yeah. Oh, here's the answer. No, it's not that easy.
I mean, you want an answer,
right?
So you're going to find an answer,
right?
So I mean, to them, that was their answer. Now, Yuri Yurdin, the one that had the sciatic flare, saved his life. Prior to his passing in 2013, he stated that he felt his teammates were forcibly taken from their tent and met a violent end. Now, they say that way it was cut from the inside. He thinks that wasn't true, that it was cut from the outside. But again, it was 1959.
It makes sense, too. Like, if somebody get out and they're sneaking up, and they cut the tent, say, you're going to come with me right now, and that's why they're not all dressed. Because
he said that there's no way that any of them would leave that tent ill-prepared. They were
unless something happened
right,
that
that's what he
them.
thinks. That's why he thinks, like, something bad had to have happened. He thinks someone forced them to leave that way. Now, he speculated that Dubini, the one that was found without a tongue and the eyes, was known for being outspoken and may have had her tongue severed by her assailants because she may have mouthed it off to them. He believed the military might have discovered the camp earlier than the official investigation team. He referenced papers indicating a secret inquiry initiated on February 6th, nearly a week before the hikers were expected back. So he said that he was asked to identify abandoned belongings at the camp, and he spoke of several unaccounted items, including mysterious pieces of cloth, possibly from military uniform, fueling these suspicions, along with the prolonged secrecy around the investigation. So the fact that it was closed very quickly, and they were told to test for radioactive stuff during the investigation, came out later. And then when the lead person in charge of that was like, why are we doing that? They wouldn't tell him why they needed to check for, like, why did they even check for radioactive? That was another question. Why would they even have them check for radioactive stuff on the clothing?
And if they didn't want to do anything about it, why did they need to know?
Exactly. You don't want to know the reason why. You told them not to investigate it, but why are we investigating this piece? So,
strange.
Theories of that. This theory is not consistent to what was found on the site, however. So if you think about if military showed up and forced them out of their tent or whatever that happened,
there'd be more footprints. Or they'd probably be tire tracks or something.
Something. You'd have more evidence. All there were ski tracks and footprints. Now, it would be almost impossible to erase any signs of other people and equipment involved. And if they kill this, and they'd have to really stage a scene. Like, and why would they stage a scene so weird?
Right.
It's so, like, it's like super specific and weird. Like, who would have thought to do the things they did?
Why wouldn't they have just packaged all the stuff up and taken it back and burned it?
And got rid of it all.
Right.
Smoothed it all out.
Right. If they were gonna try to erase it, they would have erased it.
They wouldn't have left.
They wouldn't have left anything. They might have left the bodies,
but they wouldn't have left
any of the stuff.
And then how would they have erased their prints, but not the people's prints that died? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How would you recreate all that? It would be.
I think if they were going to erase prints, they would have erased all the prints.
Exactly. There would be no prints because you wouldn't have. It would be harder to find the body.
By the time they find it, maybe it snowed.
Yeah.
You know.
Right. There wouldn't have. Snow would have covered all the prints.
Yeah, I don't think.
Or none of the prints.
I don't think it was. I don't think it was anybody.
I don't think there could have been more people there. There's like no way. Because there's no way to cover up. Snow isn't going to lie about, you know what I mean? The evidence in the snow is the biggest part of the evidence if you think about it.
Right. But the thing is, didn't they have to get permission from like the government to
They had to get permission from that sports club to do it. So it's probably associated with,
everything.
Yeah, everything was.
So I think if the government knew they were there, I don't think they would have been testing anything.
They wouldn't have tested it in that area because they want them to succeed because it looks good.
Right.
For the country.
So I think if something happened, I think it was either something naturally occurring or aliens.
Right.
I don't think
it couldn't have been another human event.
Honestly, I don't think it was the government because I think the government knew they were there and I don't think they would have done that. Unless they were just
it could have been they said it was they feel it was accidental.
Yeah.
But
I think the government was so secretive.
But they couldn't have gotten in. I mean, maybe they tested something and went, but there was no one there.
I don't think
in the land.
I think the government knew they were there, and I think that because of the secrecy surrounding the Soviet Union back then, I don't think they would have been testing anything if they knew people. Because, like, how often were people there?
Right now,
you know what I mean.
They could have waited until they were done.
They could have just waited a few days. It was there was like 2-week span where they were there, right?
Yeah, it was 16 days.
They would have just waited. I think.
Yeah, it doesn't. I really it doesn't make sense. It doesn't would happen the way they were so secretive. You're right.
I don't think. I think it doesn't make sense because they had to get permission from this group, which is part of the government. So I mean, accidents happen. It was the 50s, so maybe the government
accidentally tested it. But I don't think there were other people there.
I don't think so either.
Maybe that whatever they did startled them enough to leave their tent, but I don't think there was a military equipment and men there.
If anything, it was like testing some kind of weapon on the mountain, not near them, but just something that made a lot of noise or lights that scared them and they ran. Because you're in the middle of the wilderness, you're not expecting that.
No.
Like if you get woken up, even if it's just one dude having a shell shock PTSD reaction to some explosion or some rumbling, it gets everybody hysterical, and that's what happened.
Yeah.
You know.
But they were not sleeping. Because they had food out. Like, they were going to eat. So, they hadn't gone to sleep yet. But again, if you have PTSD and you hear that, you're going to be startled enough to freak everyone out. So, that could be definitely.
They could have been outside saying, what the hell's going on right now? Come out here and look. And get out of the tent. Something's happening. We gotta run.
We gotta run! And then someone cut the tent and ran out.
Maybe they thought there was a loud noise or explosion sound.
Could cause an avalanche.
And it was an avalanche. I mean, they said it was storming. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it was just like, who knows? Nobody will ever know.
So, the theory of military testing would also suggest that there was a secret weapon base in that area, or an air missile had exploded over them, but there's no evidence of any of that stuff. Like, people have... Now it's more free to roam around. People haven't discovered anything like that. So nothing's come out saying, oh, we found this or that. Other than that piece of metal that they're saying they think it... But just because you found it in the area, you don't know what year it... Right. And you don't have any... That's it, just that piece of metal? Like...
How do you know?
How do you know what it was?
It's been like 70 years.
Yeah. So... in Russia, there was a book published by a group of authors writing under the name of Alexei Raktin. It suggested theory that the 37-year-old that was last added to the group, along with 2 other skiers, were possible KGB agents on a mission to rendezvous with a group of CIA operatives. Their objective was to deliberately provide misleading information. According to this theory, the CIA agents realized the deceit that was involved and it had them kill 3 of the skiers, and then the other ones would take off running. Then they manipulate the scene to conceal the true nature of their deaths. Now, the 37-year-old being part of the KGB ties could have been a thing. He had some gaps in his World War II service record, which added the suspicion of why he was added to the group. Like, why was he added at the end? Like, what was that about? People, like, were trying to basically grasping at things. Thinking of the time period, thinking of this KGB, thinking of all that stuff, they were trying to find an answer, and they kind of grasped that thing. Because again, why would they cover... You can't cover it up. If there was other people there, you would see the footprints, and if you covered those footprints up and not the other ones, you would notice.
It would take too much... Besides,
too much effort.
Like, they just cover them all.
Yeah. Just cover it all up. Take the tent. Take all of it.
Right.
So
it would be easier than what they did. Like
exactly,
it would make more sense.
It would make more sense. And why? And if they were going to cover it up, wouldn't they have made it? They wouldn't have gone to great lengths to make a den and hide some people in it, than have these people over here by a fire, and it just is too much.
It really is.
So in 2013, a book called The Dead Mountain: The Untold Story of the Dyatlov Pass Incident was written by Donnie Eicher, who was he actually was a movie maker and author. And his theory was that the skiers may have been driven to hysteria by infrasound waves caused by the weather phenomenon known as the Kármán vortex street, which is what I originally found in bizarre history stuff, was this Kármán vortex street. And that led me to this whole thing. So it's an oscillating pattern that emerges when a fluid or gas, or in this instance particularly wind, flows around a specific shaped object, which would be the topographical feature of the mountain. So the mountain shape. So wind going around the mountain, causing an oscillating pattern. When it occurs at such a large scale, these wind patterns can theoretically generate very low frequency sound waves that have been blamed for harmful physiological and psychological symptoms in human beings. He claimed this unforeseen force induced such an overwhelming terror that the skiers hastily abandoned their camp. His research actually involved interviews in Russia. He had first-hand winter expeditions in Dyatlov Pass himself to try to recreate some of it. However, according to a 2001 review of the medical literature by the National Institute of Environmental Science, Health and Sciences, symptoms from the infrasound are really only like fatigue and nausea. Not the extreme terror that would cause all 9 of them to go into a panic at once.
It wouldn't have to affect all 9 of them, though. It could affect one of them to a point where they didn't know what was going on and they got panicked, like the 37-year-old.
Right. It could have. I mean, it could have caused a mass panic to all of them. A mass
panic to everybody else.
Like,
it wouldn't have to affect all of them. It could just affect one of them.
Right.
And it could affect them to a state where they made everybody else.
I mean, it's unseen, and the hearing, you can't even hear the sounds. It's just a reaction your body has to the sound waves.
Yeah, and if you have a guy who was in World War II, and he had combat, and if because who knows what nobody knows what his mental health was like, right? And there was no mental health care back then.
No, so.
And I mean, if he's like, something's affecting him, and he's starting to freak out because he's like, what is going on with me?
And he could have cut the tent.
He could have.
And then, they all ran after him to get him back in or something.
Or what's going on? And then they're terrified because this guy's acting like a lunatic, and he's been fine the whole time.
Yeah.
That's really, I think that's probably...
It's a good theory.
It really is.
And the whole theory behind, I could do a whole episode just on the Kármán vortex street thing is really interesting. Because it can cause people to lose it. But in 2001, they said that it only really caused fatigue and nausea. However, maybe they've never experimented with such a large scale, a huge mountain, and the wind force of 65 miles an hour in a snowstorm. Could it be totally different?
And you're under a lot of physical stress anyway, and emotional stress, mental stress, because you're on this expedition.
And you're a veteran.
Right, but I mean, all of these things just made a perfect storm.
A perfect storm.
I think it's like, they're halfway through this trek. This is physically exhausting. It's mentally exhausting. It's testing all of
it. They actually were a mile from the top of the mountain they wanted to get to.
I know. That's insane.
That part's so sad to me.
But it's like, they've been trekking. They get lost. They're stressed.
They're hungry.
And it's like, that has to play a part in it too. Like, these people you tested them, were they under any kind of stress? Were they doing this crazy trek in the wilderness and just got lost and had to camp where they don't feel safe? Like, I mean,
there's a lot of things.
There's a lot of things going on
that were going against them. Just finding where their tent was located. Like, that wasn't where they normally would have, so even just where they put it, it shows that there was something going on that was out of the ordinary that they would expect. And they were kind of lost because they were closer than they even realized they were. So they didn't even know they were as close as they were because they were disoriented.
And it was dark.
And the journals said they couldn't see. They got disoriented. They got off course. I mean, they had it written in their journals. So that alone caused stress for them.
Right.
So here's another thing. I like this theory. It comes to the final photograph from Talbot Brignoles. No, that's not Brignole. That's too Italian. Tybalt. What did I say?
Talbot.
It's Thibault.
I think that's pronounced Tybalt.
And it's a hyphened last name. Brignoles. On his camera, TB's camera, captured a shadowy figure navigating through a snowy forest. The image became a focal point. Now, it's a hunched over image, and you couldn't make out facial features. It became the main focal point of a Discovery Channel show titled Russian Yeti, The Killer Lives. It's been long rumored that Yeti-like beasts inhabit Siberia and into the Ural Mountains. And like everywhere else, when we talk about Yetis or Sasquatch, there's no proof or evidence of existence, but there's people who have sightings of them, right? There's people that say they have proof, but never really have seen proof, mass proof of it. So the Discovery show's host, Mike Lebecki, said that the Dyatlov Pass incident proves that Yetis are real. This is absolute proof that they're real. There's a picture.
He could take a picture of his friend.
A fuzzy picture in the snowy woods, Margaret, is proof.
Well, I mean,
but there's
honestly,
more proof.
If they're sitting there and they see this weird thing and like there's something in the woods that's huge, you take a picture of it.
Or it's their friend and they're just taking a picture of their friend walking. Like you can't make anything out really in it. And this camera's from 1959.
Right.
And it's been out in the elements.
Right.
So
and it was from Soviet Russia to begin with.
Yes. So Mike, the one that the Discovery Show hosts, says this is proof. When I found out one of the students was missing a tongue, immediately I knew it was not caused by an avalanche. Something ripped out that tongue of that woman, he said. And naturally, it had to be a Yeti. Nothing else could have taken the tongue.
It wouldn't have taken anything else, right? Just the tongue.
Now, the skiers themselves have been playfully bantering about Yetis because they found inside the tent a fake propaganda leaflet that they drew up that said, "Oh, Yetis are found in the Ural Mountains." Like they drew, having fun.
Yeah,
that was found in there. Now, this notion was swiftly dismissed due to limited number of footprints and the absence of hand-to-hand combat, and also it's about Yetis, so a lot of people didn't take it seriously.
Right. But I mean, Yeti would not wipe up his own footprints.
No,
somebody else's. Like, come on.
And it would have been more chaotic. Even
I think it would have been bloodier.
There would not have been. Their clothes would have been neatly still folded where they, you know what I mean? Like their things would have been knocked over. The tent would have been ripped apart. Like it would have been not. Like, if there were Yetis, I feel like, and they wanted to attack a human, I feel like they wouldn't have done it the way that this scene plays out.
It was a rabid Yeti. He had rabies.
He was rabies, and he folded their clothes nicely.
I know, he did. He was nice as he killed them.
But he was very tidy.
He's a tidy Yeti. He just wanted to make friends, and then they ran off scared.
I know. He was like, I just wanted to be your bud.
And then he got mad and he ripped your tongue out.
Yeah, I mean, obviously.
And took their eyeballs.
Yeah. Well, they're pretty good. For a Yeti. I don't know. I'm not a Yeti.
It's like what do they call the moose? The
moose testicles?
Yeah, what do they call those?
Oh no,
Rocky Mountain oysters.
Oysters. Yeah.
They're
bull testicles.
Ural Mountain oysters.
Ural Mountain oysters.
Yeah.
Now there's another theory again, entertained by some, that suggests the hikers fell victim to an ambush orchestrated by the Mansi tribesmen because it was Mansi land.
And
the Mansi were really pissed that they trespassed on their land. A sudden assault could explain the chaotic scene at the tents and the disorder among the hikers and the injuries sustained.
I don't agree with that.
However, the theory is dismissed due to a limited number of footprints. Again. No footprints. And the injuries, those crushing injuries could not have been done by hand-to-hand combat.
No.
They couldn't have been. And the Mansi people are historically known for peaceful coexistence, and they have no issue with the Russian people. Like, they don't attack people. Like, that's not what they do. So, and they were actually helping find them. Like, they were the ones that stumbled upon people are just grasping, trying to find an answer. Yeah. Like, well, they were in Mansi land. Maybe the Mansis did it. You know, just gotta blame the indigenous folk, of course.
Yeah.
In 2019, Russian officials reopened the case finally, initiating fresh investigation led by Andrei Kuryakov. The case was again closed, but they did have an answer. They felt an avalanche. The disarray at the campsite, along with a lack of clothing and a blunt force trauma injuries, seem to support this case. However, opponents of this avalanche theory point to the evidence that challenges its credibility. So they say the 3 victims discovered in the stream bed showed injuries so severe that unassisted travel to the location over a mile from the tent seemed implausible. The absence of signs of dragging, so they would have to drag them somewhere, along with 8 or 9 distinct sets of footprints, indicated that the fatal injuries occurred after they evacuated the tent. They couldn't have gotten away with those injuries.
Right.
And then ran from it. And you could see all the footprints. Another contradiction to this is that this region had no recent history of avalanches and no visible signs in the tree lines. Searchers found no debris would be left over from an avalanche. There were some breaking of those branches, but that was high up in the tree. And even the ski poles were stood up straight still by the tent. If there was an avalanche, wouldn't they have been knocked over?
And wouldn't the tent have been under the snow?
It was covered in snow, but again...
It snowed.
It snows, so it's hard. And they cut it open, so it would have collapsed under the pressure of the snow because it wouldn't have as much stability afterwards. So now, while the tent was on a slope not steep enough for a traditional avalanche, Kuryakov shared the possibility of a snow slab sliding over it, prompting the hikers to fear a larger avalanche was coming. So he was thinking the way it was set, enough snow built up that it slid over top of the tent, and it freaked them out enough to think, oh shit, an avalanche is coming. So they cut themselves off and took off running, waiting for it to happen when it didn't. So they got themselves to a safe distance before starting a fire and digging a snow den. So he thought they did both those things, ran off, did that immediately to save themselves, right? He thought they sought refuge under the cedar tree, attempting to build a fire. Climbing the cedar tree to break icy branches, they burned clothing in desperate attempt to survive, but tragically succumbed to the harsh conditions. Poorly dressed skiers died first, their burnt skin reflecting their struggle for warmth. A piece of the flesh bitten from Georgie could be due to hyperthermia-induced delirium or an attempt to test sensation of frostbitten hand. This is all the report that they put out after.
And his fingers were black.
As the surviving skiers cut clothes from their deceased companions to protect themselves, the group eventually split. 3 skiers, including Dyatlov, attempted to return to the tent, but froze to death in the uphill struggle. The remaining 4, better equipped, opted to build a snow den for overnight shelter in a nearby ravine with deep snow. Unfortunately, their chosen spot lay above a stream bed, leading to a tragic collapse when their digging disrupted the icy tunnels created by the frozen stream. The resulting injuries were traumatic, with a ton of snow forcing them against the rocks. Makes sense.
That makes total sense to me.
The gruesome facial damage observed, including the missing tongue, eyes, lips, likely resulted from scavenging by animals and decomposition because it started to thaw.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
Animals and thawing.
Yeah. And they were under... It was like scavenger animals would be along that stream bed trying to get little things, you know. The avalanche theory gains more momentum when 2 Swiss researchers, Alexander Puzrin and Johann Guom, presented a study to the Journal of Communications, Earth and Environment in 2021. According to their findings, a significant snow slab combined with unique slope of the Dyatlov path could have led to the tragic death of the skiers. So they did some tests and used mathematical formulas, and they supported their theory with footage from Dyatlov path, highlighting how much avalanche might have, how this type of avalanche could occur. So they made footage. And actually, I read that they were so impressed with Frozen and how they did the illustrations for Frozen. They utilized the stuff like the snow and stuff from that to recreate it.
Crazy.
Yeah. So Frozen actually helped prove this theory.
Crazy.
Isn't that freaking cool?
It is.
So this type of avalanche can only occur in areas not typically prone to avalanches. That ice slab thing, causing injuries consistent to those observed in the hikers. Importantly, there are no records of avalanches at the site before or after the incident, making his original theory that where they built up enough snow to have snow slide over the tent to scare them enough to think. Right? So that isn't a spot that has avalanches. However, that snow slab that slid off and ran over the top of the tent made them think that one was coming.
Right.
Even though there weren't really any avalanches. And them scared enough, and they built that on that in the ravine, that den would cause us crushing the snow hitting.
I think that's what happened.
Well, you did think that was
aliens
also.
Yeah.
And you did think it was a sound thing. But the thing is, a lot of them, like, well, that makes kind of sense. Like, some of them, like, make sense. Like, you're like, okay, until you hear the next one, and then you're like, well, that makes more sense.
Nobody will ever know. Like,
so,
it's basically something happened that scared them, and they ran out of the tent, and they froze to death.
Yeah.
That's what happened.
The Dyatlov Group Memorial Foundation recently addressed the Prosecutor General's statement, which was the avalanche theory, stating that their belief that the tragic deaths of the skiers resulted from an atmospheric release of powerful toxic substance during a failed secret weapons test. They still are convinced that then they're not saying that the military was there and killed them. They're saying they were scared, got out of their tent, ran because of this test, were exposed to toxins that killed some of them and not others. But that explains why they were orange. To them, that's what it is.
But the toxins would show up in a tox panel. What did they do?
Well, they said the radioactive was the toxic.
Yeah, but only 2 of them had it.
Yeah. But that was enough to cause skepticism. And again, was it only 2? Everything's sealed. They don't know.
Why would they say 2 and not all of them? Like, why would they...
Why would they admit it all?
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. So, Natalia Varsagova, they all sound like really good figure skaters to me.
Well, they do.
Don't they?
Yeah,
I love a figure skater. You know I do.
Yeah, I know, because you figure skated yourself.
Well, for like one season.
I remember going to watch you.
Little chunky.
You were a little chunky.
You can't be a chunky figure skater. It just doesn't work.
You were adorable.
I was cute, but
wicked cute.
I didn't say I was ugly. I just said I was chunky.
Oh, I like a chunky figure skater.
Me too. I think there should be more chunky figure skaters, but it was in the late 80s. They didn't want a chunky figure skater.
No, they wanted you to be able to leap and fly like a swan through the air.
So she's a seasoned Moscow journalist with extensive coverage of this whole case. She expressed skepticism also towards this avalanche theory. 2 years ago, she said, I believe that Kuryakov, who the lead investigator, generally sought the truth, but now I have my doubts. I don't buy the avalanche theory. Even after the release of the Swiss report, she said she dismissed that article, highlighting that the conclusions relied heavily on mathematical calculations and formulas and diagrams. She pointed out that the local Mansi people, numerous tourists, organizers of snowmobile tours who have never ever witnessed avalanches at that slope are unlikely to endorse these theories. So science isn't real, is basically what she said. Basically. She's saying science explanation isn't working because these people have never seen it.
I've never seen $1 million. Does it mean it's not real?
They built the tent on a slope, which could have snow built up behind it. And that behind the slope could have built up enough to where the snow slid over top of the tent in a slab because it froze.
Yeah,
and of course they wouldn't see an avalanche there.
Panic.
And they panicked. It caused panic. This slab of snow caused panic to think there really was an avalanche. That means that there wasn't an avalanche. They're telling you there was only a snow slab avalanche, which is not a real avalanche. Of course you would never see another one there because it was because where they put the tent. Mm-hmm. And he said, like, that what was his name? Kuryakov said that they did everything right, technically. If there was going to be a real avalanche, they did exactly what they should have done. But
run.
Get out. Yeah, you can't be here. We have to get out. We have to get out fast. So when they thought one was coming, they did everything. They went and they tried to build the snow den. They did all the things they were supposed to do. It wasn't a real avalanche. But they didn't do anything wrong. Like it explains the reaction and why they got out quick, just in case an avalanche was coming. So according to the Russian government, this case is closed. Right? It's an avalanche theory. They've proven it. That's what happened. Avalanche. Panic. Froze to death. Hypothermia. Crushed under the snow. Blah, blah, blah.
I think about myself. And if there's an avalanche, you have to run or you're going to die. I'm like, if I run out there without my coat and boots, I'm going to die. So I'm going to take the time to put on my boots and coat.
Again, in the midst.
And have,
But that midst of panic.
Right.
Do you even think clearly anymore?
No, I don't think it would. I'm like, I would be like, no, I'm going to die if I go out
there. Especially, they wouldn't have thought there would be an avalanche there because, again, they knew the area. They researched. There had never been an avalanche. So if this happens, especially, they weren't anticipating an avalanche. Now, I bet if they anticipated avalanches, they would never have taken our boots off. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
They would have been more prepared for an avalanche if it was an area that had avalanches. If that makes sense. Because they wouldn't have been totally disrobed. Because they would know they would have to run at some point. So it makes sense that this was what caused it. They were not prepared for any of it. But even though the government says it's closed, people do not feel like it.
People love a conspiracy theory.
Theories, all the theories are conflicting to each other. Each explanation actually introduces more questions, as we've done throughout this. You give a theory, then you start asking the question, well, why did this? Why did that? You know, you think of those things. The incident stands as a testament to the mystery that nature and sometimes human actions confuse the shit out of us. Like, nature, things happen in nature and we can't explain it. Or, you know, people do freaking weird things. We can't explain, like, we want an answer because the scene is so mysterious and their actions are so out of what would be expected. You want an answer. So you come up with theories behind it. We don't know. Is the answer, like, the infrasound? Or is the real answer in the documents that are sealed that we can never see? Like, is that where the answer lies? Like, maybe is there something totally different than what any of these theories are because we'll never see those documents. No one ever will get to see them. So it's going to be unexplained forever. And really, we know the only ones that really know what happened died. They are the only ones that could tell you, and we're not going to get an answer for them. There is a monument that stands at the Dyatlov Cemetery in Yekaterinburg. Yep. Lots of letters. Paying homage to the 9 hikers. Today, Dyatlov Pass has transformed into a hiking and tourist destination. Now, where the tent was located is at height 1,079. It's welcomed hundreds of visitors who followed Dyatlov's path on foot, snowmobile, or skis. So they want a pilgrimage, do the trip for them, basically. Pilgrims from all around the world arrived to witness the spot where the tent once stood, the stream bed where the bodies were discovered, and the cedar tree that's still standing with visible broken branches. You can still see where the branches were broke off. Some come there to gather more data. They want to prove one of their theories that they believe.
Never prove
they take pictures, film videos that support their own theory. So people go there to try to, you know, figure out really what happened or prove that this theory is it or that theory is it.
Nobody will ever know.
No.
I don't think there's no way to know.
I think the theory about the ice slab avalanche thing makes the most sense to my brain because I want to have a rational answer for it. 100% it was a panic. Like you said, it was a panic moment.
And the fact, like, if they're in the tent eating food, there's probably lights on. So if there's lights going on outside the tent, they probably wouldn't notice.
No.
Unless
there had to be
outside.
A noise.
A noise?
A noise or...
Like the snow slab thing?
Yeah.
That makes total sense.
Those two things, I think, are the most. And I think the snow slab, especially using what we know now, the knowledge we have now about utilizing, like, you know, computer-generated imaging and things like that to recreate scenes without having to put people into danger. We have access to more knowledge. Like, it makes more sense that that's what it was. And I just think it's cool that they use the frozen.
I know, and if you think it's an avalanche and you panic and you cut your way through your tent and you run and you just run and run and run until you can't run. And that's why they're like, oh shit, where are we? There's no avalanche.
And then nothing happens, and then they don't know how to get back.
Right.
Until they're like, well, we have to stay here until we
freezing. And they're not thinking because hypothermia set in. It slows down your brain.
And that could be why he bit his hand. I mean, that makes sense. Like, he was, you know, he wasn't thinking anymore.
You do weird shit.
Shit.
Some people, and then also they say when you start to get hypothermia, sometimes you take your clothes off because you feel your body.
That was another thing people said.
Think you're hot.
You think you're hot. So they burnt their clothes because the ones that had the clothes on were in the den.
But it could have been they could have all been at the fire, or most of them, while some of them were making the den, and then
Three of them were like, I'm going to try to get back to the tent because I'm freezing. We have to get back to the tent. We have to get
our clothes,
our boots. Right. We have to get our stuff.
And the other people just could have died.
And maybe they just said, okay, you two stay here, build the fire. You four go over there, build the den.
How far was the fire from the den?
250 feet.
Which is kind of far.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Unless they all split up running and they didn't even know where the other ones were.
They could have been it too. You know what I mean? You get to a point where you're like, where is everybody? But that's close enough to yell. You'd hear it.
Yeah.
But maybe they're afraid of an avalanche if they yell.
I know. There's so much. No one will ever really know what happened, but I think that the avalanche theory, to me, makes the most sense. That slab, but where it built up behind the tent enough to, if there's not a tent there, you're not going to have an avalanche. You know what I mean? Like, the tent is putting the tent on that slope with the snow buildup is what caused it.
Yeah, but it could have been, too, that the two guys died and then they left. You know what I mean? They went to a different area.
True.
You know.
Maybe they couldn't, they're like, we can't stay here. And they said they feel like they died at different times because they're wearing clothes from the other person. So it's like they utilized what was left over from the other person. They won't need their clothes anymore because
they're dead.
They're dead. So we're going to layer on.
Which maybe those two guys that were in their underwear, maybe they weren't.
Maybe they had clothes on.
Maybe they had a shirt or pants or something that they used, somebody else got.
Yeah. Or they burned it. Or whatever, trying to stay warm. The fact that they had burn marks on their feet and shins
means they're trying to warm up.
They were trying to warm up. They got clothes.
And once you start to get hypothermia,
and their clothes could have caught on fire, so they ripped them off. You don't know, or they climbed the tree. They found skin, but they also found fabric. So they had to have pants on or something on, right? Yeah. Or they would have had underwear left because they would have been ripped off. Right. So it was so much information, so many theories that I don't know. This kind of thing fascinates me.
But they needed fuel for the fire, so they had climbed up the tree to get drier wood, and they brought it down, and then trying to light a fire, they need something to catch. So maybe that's what they were using their cotton clothes.
Yeah, because everything else is frozen.
Right.
How do you catch frozen wood on fire?
Right. So it could have just been they sacrificed it and then they died.
And so the other ones were like, we can't stay here. We have to move. We have to figure out something.
There's no way we're going to be able to build a fire that's hot enough to keep us warm.
Yeah.
With no wood.
And we have two friends that are dead now.
And so it's how are they going to get wood when they have no saw? You're going to climb up the tree and ruin
And they're like, we got to get back to our gear. And the other ones were like, we're going to build this to stay warm. Maybe the other ones went to get the stuff and bring it back to the other ones. Or who knows?
Right.
But again, it died on the mountain and what happened, sadly. But again, I'm going to ask, what do you guys think happened? What theory do you believe the most?
Are you familiar with the story?
Yeah. Have you heard it before? And a podcast that did a much better job of it than me and my bumbling words.
You did a great job. I think you did a good job.
I want to know if you have a different theory, because I think it's just really interesting to see everyone's...
Because we could sit here and talk theories back and forth for hours.
And is there something that I said or you've learned about this and other documentaries or other podcasts or whatever that I didn't cover? I tried to find almost everything, but I'm sure there's more out there. Let me know if there's other ones, because I was just interested in hearing everyone's theory on it. I think it's fascinating.
It is.
And I think it kind of honors the people that passed, just talking about it,
Right. They're not forgotten. So, and it, it was a shady time in Russia, and it's scary. It's not much better now.
No, it's scary.
No offense, Russia, but I'm glad I don't live there.
For me. Let us know. So you can go to our Facebook or Instagram, and I'll post pictures. Pictures that were on the cameras are fascinating. And see...
I'm done.
We just had an avalanche. There's a snowstorm. Run out the tent! There's a Yeti! Freak out. The pictures found in the cameras, you can see them online, and those people. The people on the expedition are adorable.
Yes.
And this is wholesome to see them all being silly together.
Yeah.
So I'm going to post some of the pictures of that, and then some of the illustrations from the theories behind it, and things like that. But are you looking for Russia on there?
Yeah.
We have a globe next to us. So
I just noticed it. I'm like, ooh.
She's looking for
a
Russia
Western,
on the globe. So if you hear spinning and weird sounds, it's First of all, there's children running around upstairs, so you probably can hear that. And second of all,
all these words spinning. Are mostly just consonants.
Yeah. Russian language. Russian and German languages are... I can't barely speak English, so I just am impressed with anyone that can speak more than one language, first of all.
And Russia it's friggin' amazing. Is almost up to the freaking
North
Pole.
You're in the Arctic, man. It's cold there. Okay. So, make sure you're following us on Facebook and Instagram because we always post pictures from our episodes to give you a visual of what we're talking about. And we post our episodes on there. You can share the episodes with your friends.
Yes, if you'd like to reach out to us, you can send us a direct message through Facebook or Instagram. If you'd like to send us an email, send it to thecousinsweird@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you.
If you want to support our podcast, like we said, the best way to do it is through word of mouth. Tell your friends about us. Share us with the world. When you share us, when you review us, when you leave us stars on your platform of choice, it pushes us out there into the universe. And I know we've been hectic, and we've been a little helter-skelter, but we're trying to get back into the groove again. So, thank you for sticking with us and always supporting us. We love you guys. If you want to support us through our Patreon, patreon.com/thecousinsweird, $1 a month, you become a freaky friend, you get a free gift, and you get a free sticker and bonus content. For $5 a month, become a Taylor Treader, you get a free gift, bonus content, ad-free episodes, yearly gift, and a Skype with us when we can do it.
Yes. So please, reach out.
Our brains are done. This is our third episode today, friends.
Yes.
See, we're working it for you. We're working it for you. We're trying to get back.
Stay freaky.
Bye.